A casino is supposed to be one of the most secure environments on Earth. Cameras watch every angle. Algorithms monitor every transaction. Regulators inspect every machine. And yet, in the early 1990s, one of the biggest casino scams in American history wasn't pulled off by a mobster, a professional gambler, or a mastermind hacker breaking in from the outside. It was carried out by the very man whose job was to stop cheating. Imagine discovering that the person responsible for protecting millions of dollars in casino revenue had secretly rewritten the rules of the game. Not metaphorically, literally. Hidden deep inside slot machine software was a digital trapdoor, placed there by a government employee. A trapdoor that could transform an ordinary spin into a guaranteed jackpot. For years, nobody noticed. And when the scheme finally unraveled, it wasn't because investigators cracked the code. It wasn't because casinos detected suspicious payouts. It was because one man won too much money and acted strangely while collecting it. This is the story of Ron Harris, the Nevada Gaming Control Board programmer who learned how luck worked and then decided to control it. To understand how extraordinary this story is, you first need to understand what Ron Harris did for a living. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, casinos were rapidly becoming computerized. Traditional mechanical slot machines were giving way to electronic systems controlled by software and microchips. The gambling industry faced a new challenge. If games were now governed by code, someone had to ensure that code couldn't be manipulated. That responsibility fell to regulators. Ronald Dale Harris worked for the Nevada Gaming Control Board, the agency tasked with maintaining the integrity of gambling throughout Nevada. Harris was not a casino employee. He was a regulator. His job involved examining software and electronic systems used in casino games, searching for vulnerabilities, preventing fraud, and ensuring fairness. In many ways, he was one of the trusted guardians of the entire gaming industry. Colleagues viewed him as highly intelligent. He possessed a deep understanding of computers during a period when relatively few people had advanced software expertise. While most casino patrons saw flashing lights and spinning reels, Harris saw source code, random number generators, and mathematical probabilities. He knew exactly how modern gambling machines worked. More importantly, he knew how they could be manipulated. For most people, that knowledge would have remained professional expertise. For Harris, it became temptation. The brilliance of his scheme wasn't that he hacked slot machines after they reached casino floors. The brilliance was that he never needed to, because he had access before the machines were approved. According to investigators, Harris secretly modified software inside certain slot machines. Instead of changing the overall odds, which would have been easily detected during testing, he inserted hidden instructions designed to remain dormant under normal circumstances. The machines would appear completely fair. Thousands of players could use them without ever noticing anything unusual. But buried within the code was a secret trigger. If a player inserted coins in a precise sequence and then played in a specific way, the machine would activate the hidden routine and award a jackpot. To everyone else, it looked like incredible luck. To Harris, it was simply following instructions. Think about how ingenious that was. Most casino cheating schemes try to alter outcomes directly. They create statistical anomalies. They leave patterns investigators can discover. Harris did something different. He built a hidden doorway that only he knew existed. The machine wasn't malfunctioning. It was behaving exactly as he had programmed it. The trigger sequence was so unusual that ordinary gamblers would almost never activate it accidentally. The machines could operate for years without raising suspicion. Audits would show normal performance. Casino accountants would see nothing alarming. The software appeared clean. The scam was practically invisible. Of course, Harris couldn't personally walk into casinos and start winning jackpots. People in the gaming industry knew who he was. A regulator suddenly collecting large payouts would immediately attract attention. So he recruited accomplices. Among them was Reed McNeil, a man who would become central to both the success and failure of the operation. The arrangement was simple. Harris provided the knowledge. His associates collected the money. They would visit selected machines, perform the trigger sequence, and receive jackpots that appeared entirely legitimate. Casino employees would see winners. Security cameras would record ordinary gameplay. Nobody realized the outcome had been secretly predetermined long before the first coin entered the machine. For years, the operation remained hidden. And that might be the most shocking part of the story. This wasn't a quick smash-and-grab theft. Investigators later concluded that Harris had been exploiting his position for an extended period. The scheme succeeded because it blended perfectly into the environment it targeted. Casinos expect winners. Jackpots happen every day. A machine paying out doesn't look suspicious. A machine paying out exactly when an insider wants it to is much harder to detect. As successful as the slot machine manipulation was, Harris eventually turned his attention to an even more ambitious challenge: keno. Now, keno isn't supposed to be predictable. Like a lottery drawing, it's built around randomness. Players select numbers and hope luck lands in their favor. But Harris understood something many people never consider. In computerized systems, randomness is often generated by algorithms. Algorithms follow rules. And if someone understands those rules well enough, the impossible can start to become predictable. Investigators later determined that Harris developed a program capable of forecasting outcomes in a computerized keno game by exploiting knowledge of its pseudo-random number generation process. Instead of manipulating the machine directly, he attempted to anticipate what numbers would be selected. This represented an entirely different level of sophistication. The slot machine scheme relied on hidden code. The keno scheme relied on understanding the mathematics beneath apparent randomness, and for a while it worked. Then came January 1995, a date that would change everything. At Bally's Park Place Casino in Atlantic City, Reed McNeil presented a winning keno ticket worth $100,000. On paper, it should have been a moment of celebration. Most people would have been ecstatic, shouting, calling family members, planning vacations. McNeil wasn't. Casino staff noticed something odd. Instead of acting like a lucky winner, he seemed nervous, uncomfortable. When officials requested identification and information necessary to process the payout, McNeil reportedly became reluctant. The behavior immediately raised concerns. Security personnel began asking questions. Gaming investigators became interested. What should have been a routine jackpot suddenly became something else entirely. It's astonishing when you think about it. Years of planning, advanced software manipulation, deep technical expertise, a scheme that had evaded detection inside one of the world's most heavily regulated industries. And the entire operation began collapsing because someone couldn't convincingly act like a happy winner. Investigators dug deeper. The Atlantic City incident created a trail. That trail led to McNeil. McNeil led to Harris. And once authorities focused their attention on the Nevada Gaming Control Board employee, everything changed. Investigators examined software. They reviewed machine histories. They analyzed connections between jackpots and individuals associated with Harris. What they discovered was staggering. The person responsible for protecting casino systems had been exploiting them. The trusted insider had become the threat. The irony was impossible to ignore. Ron Harris wasn't defeating security measures. In many cases, he had helped create them. He understood exactly where oversight was strongest and where vulnerabilities existed. He knew how software was reviewed. He knew how audits were conducted. He knew what investigators looked for. And because he knew all of that, he also knew what they might miss. As evidence mounted, Harris's world unraveled rapidly. The scandal sent shockwaves throughout the gambling industry. Casinos depend on trust. Players trust that games are fair. Casinos trust regulators to enforce standards. Regulators trust employees to act with integrity. The Harris case struck at the center of that trust. If a regulator could secretly manipulate software, what else was possible? The implications were enormous. Eventually, Harris pleaded guilty to multiple counts related to slot machine cheating. He received a prison sentence of 7 years, though he served substantially less time before being released. His reputation was destroyed. The man once responsible for protecting gaming integrity became one of the most infamous figures in gambling history. His punishment extended beyond prison. Harris was added to Nevada's notorious exclusion list, commonly known as the Black Book. Inclusion on that list effectively bars individuals from entering casinos. The irony could hardly be greater. The man who understood casino systems better than almost anyone was permanently excluded from the very world he once helped regulate. Yet the story doesn't end with a conviction. In many ways, the most important chapter came afterward. The Harris scandal forced regulators and casino operators to confront uncomfortable questions about insider threats. Before the case, there was a tendency to focus on external attackers, cheaters, hackers, counterfeiters, people trying to break into the system. Harris demonstrated that sometimes the greatest danger comes from someone already inside, someone trusted, someone with legitimate access, someone who understands the system better than anyone else. The industry responded by strengthening oversight procedures, increasing scrutiny of software certification processes, improving separation of responsibilities, and creating additional layers of verification. The goal was simple: ensure that no single individual could ever possess the same combination of trust, access, and opportunity that Harris once had. The case also became a fascinating lesson in cybersecurity long before cybersecurity became a household term. Today, we hear constant warnings about insider threats, employees leaking information, administrators abusing privileges, developers inserting malicious code. Ron Harris was an early example of a problem that would later become common across industries. His story wasn't really about slot machines. It was about trust. Every secure system ultimately relies on people, and people can be unpredictable. A firewall doesn't get greedy. An encryption algorithm doesn't become tempted. Software doesn't decide it wants more money. Humans do. That's why the Harris case remains so compelling decades later. It wasn't merely a technical crime, it was a human one. At its heart is a paradox. The better Harris became at understanding gambling technology, the more capable he became of defeating it. The very skills that made him valuable also gave him the power to abuse that position. And for a time, he succeeded brilliantly. He manipulated machines without smashing them. He stole money without robbing a vault. He altered outcomes without changing appearances. He effectively hacked luck itself. But in the end, the mathematics, the software, the secret code, and the carefully hidden triggers weren't what defeated him. Human behavior did. One suspicious jackpot, one nervous accomplice, one moment that felt wrong. And suddenly, one of the most sophisticated casino scams ever conceived began to unravel. Ron Harris set out to beat a system designed to catch cheaters. For years, he did exactly that. But the lesson of his story is that no matter how advanced a scheme becomes, every conspiracy contains a weak point. Sometimes it's a flaw in the code. Sometimes it's a vulnerability in security. And sometimes it's simply a man holding a winning ticket who doesn't know how to smile.